What if the afterlife wasn't quiet? What if it was chaotic, colorful, and crawling with a fast-talking, pinstripe-wearing menace named Beetlejuice? In 1988, director Tim Burton turned the idea of death on its head, with a film so bizarre, so visually wild, and so hysterically twisted, it redefined what it meant to make a ghost story. This wasn't just a movie. It was a cultural thunderbolt, a box office surprise, a film that made us laugh at death and maybe even feel a little less afraid of it. Beetlejuice smirking, but behind the laughs was pain, struggle, genius, and one of the most unforgettable performances in film history. This is the story of Beetlejuice, how it was made, why it worked, who risked everything, and what it still means today. And remember, don't say his name 3 times, or do. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Beetle. Back in the late 1980s, Hollywood was going through a transformation. Big hair, big personalities, and even bigger ideas were taking over the silver screen. But in the middle of all that came a strange little film that didn't follow the rules. It wasn't a romantic comedy. It wasn't a straight horror movie. It wasn't even a traditional ghost story. It was something completely different. Released in March of 1988, Beetlejuice was a gothic roller coaster that combined the supernatural with slapstick comedy, stop-motion monsters, and a story about life after death, told with heart, humor, and a whole lot of weirdness. Directed by a then up-and-coming filmmaker named Tim Burton, who was just 29 years old at the time, the film took a huge risk. Warner Brothers didn't expect it to be a hit. The studio had doubts. The budget was tight, and the story way too strange for a typical Hollywood crowd. But what happened next shocked everyone. The film became a surprise hit. Audiences couldn't get enough of the offbeat charm, the zany characters, and especially the man in the striped suit, Michael Keaton's unforgettable performance as Beetlejuice. In fact, Keaton was only on screen for around 17 minutes total, but those 17 minutes changed his career and the movie industry forever. Beetlejuice went on to win an Academy Award for Best Makeup, inspired an animated TV series, a Broadway musical, and even talks of a long-awaited sequel, almost 4 decades later. But here's what makes Beetlejuice more than just a cult classic. It touched a nerve. It made people think about what comes after life, not with fear, but with curiosity, creativity, and a little bit of laughter. In this documentary, we'll take you behind the scenes of this iconic film. We'll meet the stars. We'll dig into the strange ideas that gave it life. We'll uncover the struggles, the risks, and the unexpected success that made Beetlejuice an American treasure. So if you've ever laughed at death, danced to Day-O, or whispered Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, you're in the right place, because this isn't just the story of a movie, it's the story of a phenomenon. To truly understand why Beetlejuice struck such a chord in 1988, we need to go back to a time when the world, and especially Hollywood, looked very different. The year was 1988. Ronald Reagan was in his final year as President of the United States. The Cold War was still very real. Wall Street was booming, but so was anxiety. Americans were caught between optimism and unease, wealth and worry, tradition and rebellion. In pop culture, we saw this tension reflected everywhere. Movies were loud, bold, and bursting with special effects. Action heroes like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone dominated the box office. Films like Die Hard, Rambo 3, and Rain Man were playing in theaters. Everything was big, loud, and full of muscles, or drama. But audiences were getting tired. Beneath the surface, people wanted something different. Something weirder. Something that didn't just entertain, but made them feel. Something that didn't fit into a box. And then along came Tim Burton. Fresh off his directorial debut with Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Burton was already showing signs of a unique vision. He didn't see the world the way other directors did. His characters were strange. His worlds were gothic, shadowy, and oddly beautiful. And most of all, he believed in the power of imagination. Beetlejuice was greenlit in this very moment. A rare window in Hollywood history where studios were just adventurous enough to take risks on unusual ideas. But it wasn't just the film industry that made the movie possible. In the late 80s, America itself was changing. The baby boomer generation was entering adulthood. Suburban life was growing. Death and the afterlife, usually serious, quiet subjects, were becoming themes people could explore more openly, even with humor. And with the rise of MTV and music videos, visual style mattered more than ever. Audiences were used to surreal, imagery, bold costumes, and fast edits. Beetlejuice, with its stop-motion monsters, exaggerated sets, and Danny Elfman's carnival-like score fit right in, while still standing out. So when you look at Beetlejuice, you're not just watching a movie. You're looking at a time capsule, a reflection of a decade that was wrestling with its identity through big hair, loud music, and yes, even ghost comedies. This was a moment when weird was finally welcome, and Tim Burton kicked the door wide open. Behind every great movie is a great mess. And when it came to making Beetlejuice, things didn't exactly go according to plan. Let's rewind to the mid-1980s. Warner Brothers had a script on their hands. It was called Beetlejuice. But it wasn't the Beetlejuice you know. The original story, it was dark. Really dark. There was barely any humor, and Beetlejuice wasn't a funny ghost. He was a demonic force, more monster than man, who wanted to do terrible things. And instead of helping the dead couple scare away the living, he wanted to murder the family. Yep, that was the first draft. So what changed? Warner Brothers brought in a fresh director, Tim Burton, who had just finished Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He was quirky, he was young, and he had a very different idea of what this movie could be. Burton saw the script and thought, what if this wasn't a horror story, but a comedy with horror in it? He brought in screenwriters Warren Scarron and Michael McDowell, who helped rewrite the tone, the characters, and the plot. Burton also had a very clear vision. He wanted to blend the bizarre with the hilarious, the grotesque with the charming. It had to feel like a children's book written for adults, a little scary, a little funny, and very, very weird. Now here's where it gets interesting. When it came time to cast Beetlejuice, Warner Brothers had big names in mind. Sammy Davis Jr. was one of the studio's suggestions for the title role. Tim Burton, meanwhile, wanted someone wild, someone unpredictable. And that's when Michael Keaton entered the picture. Keaton wasn't the obvious choice. He was mostly known for comedy, Mr. Mom, Night Shift, and stand-up routines. No one had seen him like this before. But when Keaton read the part, he dove in headfirst. He asked the costume team for mold, moss, rotting teeth, crazy wigs, and white skin. He helped invent the entire look of the character. Once he put it all on, he became Beetlejuice. And get this, Michael Keaton only had 2 weeks to prepare and filmed all his scenes in just 2.5 weeks. But those 17 minutes on screen? Absolute lightning in a bottle. Meanwhile, behind the camera, Burton's world was coming alive. They used practical effects, models, puppets, stop-motion animation. No CGI. Every sandworm was handmade, every strange hallway, every creepy sculpture, all built with love, sweat, and a little madness. The art direction was Gothic meets cartoon. The special effects were deliberately low budget. Burton didn't want the film to look polished. He wanted it to feel like a haunted pop-up book jumping off the screen, but it wasn't easy. Burton clashed with the studio. The budget was only $15 million, tiny even by 1988 standards. He had to cut corners, make compromises, and hope that audiences would understand his offbeat style. And then there was the score. Enter Danny Elfman, the frontman of Oingo Boingo and Burton's musical soulmate. Elfman created a soundtrack that was spooky, bouncy, and utterly unforgettable, just like the movie itself. When the film wrapped, even Burton wasn't sure it would work. But then the test screenings happened, and people couldn't stop laughing. Audiences loved it. The weirdness, the humor, the wild visuals, it all clicked. Warner Brothers had no idea what they had on their hands, and then Beetlejuice hit theaters and made more than $74 million at the box office. From a rejected horror script to a box office smash, Beetlejuice became the kind of Hollywood success story no one saw coming. All because a group of artists took a crazy idea and didn't hold back. Great movies live and die by their characters, and Beetlejuice didn't just give us characters, it gave us icons. Each role was perfectly cast, and every actor brought something unforgettable to the screen. So let's meet the strange and wonderful residents of this twisted afterlife. Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice. Let's start with the star of the show. He's loud, crude, rude, and hilarious. He's the bioexorcist who promises to scare the living away. He's Beetlejuice. Spelled with 2 E's but pronounced like Beetlejuice. Michael Keaton's performance is nothing short of electric. He created a character so original, so unpredictable, that it still lives in pop culture today. What's wild is, Keaton only had about 17 minutes of screen time, but in those 17 minutes he owned the film. His mix of manic energy, improvisation, and gross-out humor turned him into the movie's heartbeat. And here's the fun part. Many of Beetlejuice's lines were improvised. Keaton made them up on the spot. Tim Burton later said, Michael Keaton was 90% of that character, and fans still quote him decades later. It's showtime. Alec Baldwin as Adam Maitland, Geena Davis as Barbara Maitland. They're the heart of the story. A sweet small-town couple who die in a car accident, only to find themselves stuck haunting their own home. Alec Baldwin and Geena Davis played their roles with warmth and charm. They weren't scary ghosts. They were just two regular folks trying to figure out the afterlife. This role was a shift for Baldwin, who was just starting his film career. For Geena Davis, it added another hit to a growing list. Right after The Fly and the Accidental Tourist, together they made death feel oddly comforting and funny. Winona Ryder as Lydia Dietz. Then there's Lydia, the moody teenager who sees the dead and understands them more than the living. Played by Winona Ryder, Lydia became a symbol for every misunderstood kid in the 80s and 90s. She wore black. She wrote poetry. She wasn't afraid of ghosts. In fact, she liked them. Ryder was only 15 when she shot the film, but her performance was wise beyond her years. She added soul, depth, and just the right amount of rebellion. Lydia's famous line, "I myself am strange and unusual," and with that, she became a voice for an entire generation. Catherine O'Hara as Delia Dietz. Now we meet the living. Delia is Lydia's stepmother, a modern art fanatic who sees ghosts as a design challenge. Played by the brilliant Catherine O'Hara, Delia is dramatic, snobby, and absolutely unforgettable. O'Hara brought big laughs to the role, especially in the now iconic dinner scene, where she's possessed and forced to dance to Deo, the Banana Boat song. That scene? Completely absurd and completely perfect. Jeffrey Jones as Charles Dietz, Delia's husband and Lydia's father. Charles is a tired businessman who just wants peace and quiet. Jeffrey Jones plays him with great comic timing, adding a grounded feel to a world that's anything but normal. He's the bridge between the old world and the strange new one. Sylvia Sidney as Juno. And finally, we have Juno, the afterlife caseworker who chain smokes through her slit throat and keeps everything running on the other side. Veteran actress Sylvia Sidney brought a sharp, no-nonsense energy to the role. She represented the bureaucracy of the afterlife and added a touch of old-school Hollywood class. A cast that just worked. It's rare to find a movie where every actor feels perfectly cast. But Beetlejuice nailed it. From the leads to the side characters, even the ghosts in the waiting room, everyone felt just right. Their chemistry was offbeat, but sincere. And that's what made this bizarre ghost story feel so human. Every great film has moments that stick with you. And Beetlejuice, it's packed with them. Scenes so strange, so funny, and so visually unique, they've been burned into our pop culture memory. Let's dive into the weird, wild, and unforgettable moments that made Beetlejuice a cult classic. 1. The car crash. Death comes quietly. The story begins not with screams, but with silence. Adam and Barbara Maitland, our sweet small-town couple, are driving home from town. They swerve to avoid a dog, and the car plunges off a bridge. What's haunting isn't the crash. It's what doesn't happen. No dramatic music, no horror. Just a quiet return to the house. So quiet, they don't even realize they're dead. It's a masterclass in subtle storytelling, and it immediately tells the audience, this movie doesn't play by the rules. 2. The handbook for the recently deceased. It's dull. It's confusing, and it's the only guide Adam and Barbara have in the afterlife. The handbook for the recently deceased becomes a recurring gag, and a symbol of how broken the system is in this version of the afterlife. Even Lydia jokes, live people ignore the strange and unusual. I myself am strange and unusual. It's a funny yet oddly profound moment. 3. The waiting room of the dead now. Here's a scene no one ever forgets. A waiting room, filled with ghosts. A man with a shrunken head, a woman sawed in half, a smoker who lit herself on fire, a surfer with a shark bite. Each ghost tells a story, without a single word. This scene showed us a vision of the afterlife that was absurd, broken, and somehow bureaucratic. Like a trip to the DMV, but for dead people. It's Tim Burton. At his best, creepy, funny, and unforgettable. 4. The dinner table possession. Deo! This might just be the most iconic scene in the entire movie. Delia Dietz hosts a dinner party. Suddenly, she and her guests become possessed. They're Bodies jerk into a synchronized dance routine to Harry Belafonte's Day-O, the Banana Boat song. It's silly, it's surreal, and it's perfectly timed. The moment ends with a ghostly hand reaching out of a bowl of shrimp and grabbing a guest's face. Audiences didn't know whether to laugh or scream, so they did both, and the scene became an instant classic. Even today, people remember Beetlejuice as that movie with the banana boat dance. 5. Beetlejuice appears. It's showtime. He's been teased. He's been mentioned. But when Beetlejuice finally appears, he takes over the movie. Michael Keaton bursts onto the screen in a whirlwind of energy, breaking the fourth wall, making dirty jokes, and causing pure chaos. The line, "It's showtime," has become a cultural catchphrase used in sports, politics, and pop culture far beyond the film. This scene shows Keaton at his wildest and proves just how powerful 17 minutes of screen time can be. 6. The undead wedding scene in One of Vow. The film's weirdest moments, Beetlejuice tries to force Lydia into marrying him, in a red tuxedo no less. It's creepy, it's hilarious, and it's surprisingly emotional. Barbara and Adam fight to stop the wedding, using sandworms and courage, and Lydia finds her strength facing the living and the dead with her unique brand of bravery. This scene ties it all together: family, fear, love, and letting go. 7. The final scene. Jump in the line. After everything, the Maitlands and Lydia find peace, sharing their home in harmony. Lydia walks in from school, drops her books, and then she floats into the air to Jump in the Line, Shake, Senora by Harry Belafonte. It's joyful, it's weird, and it's the perfect ending. From death to dancing, from grief to celebration, that's Beetlejuice in a nutshell. Why these scenes still matter? These moments weren't just funny, they were bold. They didn't rely on expensive CGI or big explosions. They used creativity, timing, expression, and heart. Beetlejuice showed us that movies could be silly and smart, dark and hopeful, creepy and comforting. And those scenes, they're why the movie still works decades later. When Beetlejuice hit theaters in March 1988, no one knew what to expect. A comedy about ghosts? A lead character who's barely in the film? A director who had only made one movie before? It didn't sound like a recipe for success. But then, something magical happened. Box office surprise. Beetlejuice opened at number 1. Word of mouth. Spread fast. Audiences came for the laughs and stayed for the originality. On a modest budget of just $15 million, the film made over $74 million at the box office. That's nearly 5 times its cost. For Warner Brothers, it was a shock. For Tim Burton, it was a launch pad. The weird little movie had done what no one expected. It became a hit. Critical acclaim critics didn't just like Beetlejuice. They respected it. They praised Michael Keaton's fearless performance, Tim Burton's inventive direction, and the film's playful handling of death and the afterlife. It was something different, something bold. And then came the awards. In 1989, Beetlejuice won the Academy Award for Best Makeup. That grotesque, brilliant design? It was finally recognized for its creativity. The film also earned 8 Saturn Award nominations and won for Best Horror Film and Best Makeup. It wasn't just a box office win, it was a creative triumph. Growing a cult following after its theatrical run, Beetlejuice found a second life, on home video, cable TV, and in pop culture. People quoted the lines, kids dressed up as Beetlejuice for Halloween, and the character, originally meant to be scary, became beloved. In 1989, just a year after the movie's release, Beetlejuice, the animated series, premiered on TV. It softened the character, made him wacky and silly, and introduced a whole new generation to the underworld. For many Gen X and millennial kids, this cartoon was their first glimpse of Burton's strange and wonderful universe. The Broadway show decades later, Beetlejuice was reborn again, this time on stage. In 2019, Beetlejuice the musical opened on Broadway. With a new script, new music, and a fresh take on the story, the show was loud, colorful, and deeply emotional. It honored the film while exploring new themes, grief, loss, and acceptance, with heart and humor. Audiences loved it. Fans, old and new, packed the theaters. And Beetlejuice was back in the spotlight. A sequel on the horizon for over 30 years, fans begged for a sequel. Rumors came and went. Scripts were written and scrapped. But finally, Beetlejuice 2 became real. With Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, and Catherine O'Hara returning to their roles, and Tim Burton back in the director's chair, the sequel is set to hit theaters in 2024. It's a rare thing in Hollywood, an original story continuing after decades, with the original team intact. And that says something powerful. This story still matters. Why Beetlejuice still matters today. So, why has Beetlejuice survived for so long? Maybe it's because it doesn't try to be perfect. It's messy, funny, strange, just like real life. It reminds us that death isn't the end of the story, that even in darkness there's laughter, and that sometimes the strangest people understand us best. In a world full of reboots and remakes, Beetlejuice still stands tall, because it dared to be different, and in doing so, it became timeless. At first glance, Beetlejuice might just look like a strange comedy about ghosts, death, and a wild guy in a striped suit. But if you look a little closer, you'll see that it's also about life. Behind the jokes, the chaos, and the dancing ghosts, Beetlejuice has a few powerful things to say about who we are, what we leave behind, and how we choose to live. Let's take a moment to talk about the deeper meaning hidden inside all that madness. 1. Death isn't the end. It's the beginning of something new. One of the biggest lessons in Beetlejuice is how it handles death. Adam and Barbara die in the first few minutes of the film, but instead of vanishing, they start a whole new journey. They learn, they grow, and they find purpose, even after life. The movie gently reminds us that death isn't something to fear. It's a part of the cycle. It's strange, it's confusing, but maybe it's not so bad after all. 2. Home is where you make it. After they die, Adam and Barbara try to hold on to their home. They don't want strangers changing it. They're scared of losing what they had. But by the end, something changes. Instead of chasing the past, they share the space. With Lydia, with the Dietzes, with the living. They learn to accept change and find peace in a new version of their home. Sometimes, life forces us to let go. But when we do, we might find something even better waiting. 3. Embrace the strange and unusual. Lydia Dietz is the heart of the movie's message. She's young, lonely, and different, and in a world that tells her to fit in, she finds strength in standing out. Her famous line, "I myself am strange and unusual," isn't just quirky, it's a declaration of self-acceptance. The film celebrates people who are weird, quiet, creative, and misunderstood. It tells us, you don't have to be normal to be loved. In fact, your uniqueness is your power. 4. Kindness. Outlives chaos. Beetlejuice, for all his charm, represents chaos. He's selfish, loud, unpredictable. But it's not Beetlejuice who saves the day. It's Lydia's heart. It's Adam and Barbara's patience. It's kindness that brings peace to the house, not fear. In a world full of noise, the movie reminds us, gentle souls still matter. Quiet kindness still wins. 5. Time is short. Make it meaningful. Whether you're alive or not, the movie shows one clear truth. We don't get unlimited chances. Adam and Barbara wait too long to act. Lydia nearly gets trapped in a forced wedding. Beetlejuice takes things too far and gets sent back to the waiting room. Life gives us windows of opportunity, and when we see them, we need to jump in the line. Why these lessons last even. Though Beetlejuice is wrapped in jokes and weird visuals, the core messages are real. They speak to something we all feel, especially as we grow older. That fear of being forgotten, that need to belong, that search for peace, purpose, and connection. And the film says, it's okay to feel lost. It's okay to be weird. What matters is how we treat people and how we move forward. Because in the end, death is just a doorway. And what's on the other side depends on how we've lived. So now that you've revisited the world of Beetlejuice, the laughter, the chaos, the oddly touching moments, we want to hear from you. What did Beetlejuice mean to you? Were you one of the lucky ones who saw it in theaters back in 1988? Did you first discover it on VHS, cable, or late-night TV? Or maybe, like so many others, you grew up with the animated series and danced to Day-O in your living room? Drop your memories in the comments. Tell us your favorite scene. Share your favorite line. We read everything. And we'd love to know what this movie meant in your life. And hey, if this documentary brought back memories, made you smile, or helped you see this classic in a new light, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more deep dives into the movies that shaped generations. And don't forget to share this with someone who's strange and unusual. They'll thank you for it, because in a world that's always trying to be perfect, it's the weird, the bold, and the beautifully broken things that stick with us the most. So go ahead. Celebrate the weird, rewatch the movie, and maybe, just once, say his name out loud. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Beetle. Fade to black. It's strange how some movies don't fade with time. They don't age. They grow. Beetlejuice was never supposed to be a hit. It broke the rules. It blended comedy with horror, the weird with the heartfelt. And yet, it connected. Across generations, across decades, across genres. It made us laugh at things we were supposed to fear. It showed us that the afterlife could be silly, that the living could be haunted by the past, and the dead could still crave connection. And somehow, in all that chaos, it left behind a message of hope. For those of us who were there in 1988, Beetlejuice wasn't just a movie, it was a moment. And for those just discovering it now, it's a reminder that different can be beautiful, that strange can be strong, and that sometimes, the best stories are the ones we never saw coming. As the lights fade and the music swells, we say thank you to Tim Burton, to Michael Keaton, to the entire cast and crew for creating a world that was messy, magical, and meaningful. Because Beetlejuice wasn't just about death, it was about life and how we choose to live it. Thanks for watching. End credits roll.